Hey guys, and welcome to the Australian Reptile Park. My name is Dean and I'm the head mammal and bird keeper here. Today we're going to be talking about hand raising koala joeys and a little bit about koalas. So here you can see I've got little Elsa. Now Elsa was hand raised by Haley, who is our curator, but I've also raised two lots of koalas myself. As you can see here, she's having a little suckle on my finger, being a big sook today. It's actually quietened her down, which is quite good, so I can talk about her. So koalas are a really unique animal. They're only found here in Australia. They have some really interesting qualities about them, and one is their huge nose here. You can see her nose right there, and that's for smelling eucalypt leaves. That's how they find their eucalypt. These guys eat only eucalypt leaves. And we have also, they've got their double thumbs. So they've changed one of their fingers into their thumbs. And one other interesting thing is, just like us, they have individual fingerprints. So if they do anything wrong, we can, the police can find them. Another thing is they have a backward-facing pouch, which is really unusual for an animal that lives up in the tree. Two other Australian animals who have backward-facing pouches are wombats and devils. And that's because they dig their burrows and they don't want to get the dirt in their pouch. Isn't she super cute? Another thing is they're such a unique animal, and they actually give birth to a tiny jelly bean baby, which is underdeveloped and then has to crawl into the pouch and develop in there. So they're this fluffy looking animal that looks like a bear, that has a backward facing pouch that lives up a tree, and that gives birth to a jelly bean and eats toxic eucalypt. So it's a pretty unique animal, and they live only here in Australia. So pretty crazy, hey? So these guys, their food. So these guys sleep for about 20 hours a day, but they're one of the animals that take the most amount of work for us here at the Australian Reptile Park. Just today, this morning, I've been out for 5 hours cutting their koala leaves, and out of the 800 different species of koala leaf here in Australia, they only eat around about 50 of those. And out of those 50, we only have around about 15 here on the Central Coast. So it's one of my biggest jobs. And it can be quite frustrating. You can go out and think you've got the best leaf in the world. You can come back and put it into their pots, and they'll turn around and sniff their nose up and go back to sleep and look at you and go, hey, that's not my food. So it is very stressful for us, and one of our biggest jobs here at the Australian Reptile Park. So these guys, this is Elsa, who's been hand raised, obviously. And what happens with koalas when they throw their joeys, unfortunately, sometimes we have to step in. We want mums to raise all their joeys because mum gives them everything in life that they need to survive. Unfortunately, when a joey does get thrown, we have to step in. So how Elsa came about, we were down here doing leaves, and one of the customers came up to us and said there's a little baby joey on the ground. So we went over and investigated, and poor Elsa, she was only about 280 grams. She only had a little bit of fur on. They look really weird because they've got these big noses, too big for their head, and they're flailing around because they're out of the pouch. They feel a bit, they feel unsecure. And she was crying. So we went over and picked her up. We ran up and got a pouch and put her in that pouch. We then went and investigated mum and why she would throw a joey. We found out that Irene, her mother, had mastitis. Now, mastitis is an infection in their mammary glands where they produce milk. So she wasn't producing milk, and it was very painful and sore in her pouch. So she'd actually thrown the joey out. So we had to put Irene on some antibiotics. And so this dries up her milk. So we couldn't actually put Elsa back with her mum. So that means when we do decide to take the joey, it's a big job for me. And what that entails is a lot of sleepless nights. Joeys need a lot of care. They're like newborn babies. You have to get up every 2 hours and give them little feeds. When they first are thrown, she was dehydrated, so we had to give her some hydration fluids. And then we just start on very small amounts of milk. And why that is because they're not used to this milk. This milk is actually made by a company called Wombaroo, and they make special formula for all of our native animals. And it's very high in fats and nutrition. So we start introducing this to her every 2 hours so it doesn't upset her little tummy. Now koalas, when they've been with their mum, being used to being in a pouch, moved around, nice and feeling nice and secure. So when they come out of the pouch and we put them in this unnatural environment for them, so it takes about 2 weeks for them to settle down. They're getting a bottle put in their mouth. The bottle is a latex teat, so it feels very different to their mothers. We have to have them in a hot box, which is around about 34 degrees. And we have to put them in little pouches so it replicates mum. So for the first 2 weeks, they don't actually like this. So for the first 2 weeks, the thing that we have to do is walk around with them shoved up our shirts. And so this gives them nice warm area. We move around with them under our shirt and it feels like mum is jumping around in a tree and it's like rocking a baby. So they go to sleep. They eventually get used to the teat and you can start then feeding them with more amounts of milk on longer durations. So it might be so from every 2 hours, then it'll go up to every 4 hours, and then they'll go to 3 feeds a day. She's very interested in my shirt here. Oh, she's having a bit of a cry now. So it's a 6-month process. Usually when they are thrown, it's around about the 6-month age when they're first coming out of the pouch. And that's usually when they'll get thrown. So then it's another 6 months for me to be looking after this koala, and it's a full-time job. So the first couple of weeks or the first month is very tiring. You're up checking the koala all the time because she'll come out of her pouch and cry, and you wonder what she's looking for. At this same period in time, the koalas start coming out. So once she's settled down a bit, she starts to come out and investigate. All koalas are different. Elsa was a really laid-back koala. Nothing really fazed her. She didn't want to be held all the time. She was quite happy in her pouch. But I've raised other koalas. One, for instance, is Rosie. She's hiding behind here. We'll have a look at her in a minute. And Manning. So Rosie was totally different. She was very clingy. She wanted to be on the back of my head the whole time. Anywhere I go, she didn't want to be left alone. With Manning was the same. But he was a little bit different, as in he wanted his bottle at a certain temperature, and if his leaves weren't positioned in the right place, he wouldn't eat them. And he was like a very needy koala, always wanted to be around him. But Elsa, she was very relaxed. So once we hand raise our koalas for about 6 months, they go through a process, and it's really when they come out of the pouch and mum first throws them, after a couple of weeks they settle down, they come out and start nuzzling your hand, and you don't actually know why they're nuzzling. So to look at this, koalas need to start eating leaves, and after their milk, they have to actually be weaned off their milk onto leaves. So they need this thing called pap from their mum, and it's quite gross. They need to eat their mum's poop. So mum will produce a really oily poo. After the baby nuzzling for about an hour, she'll produce this extra oily pap. The koala starts eating that and will eat that for up to about 7 weeks. So on and off for 7 weeks with milk. But once it has that pap, it can actually eat the eucalyptus leaves that are toxic. So it gets all that good gut flora from its mum into its gut, and then it can eat those toxic leaves. So it's pretty cool, isn't it? If they don't have that pap, then they don't survive. So we can't just go to the shop and get pap. I wish there was a shop so we could just go down there and buy it, but it doesn't happen that way. So her mum Irene, we actually have to go and stimulate her for 1 hour until she starts producing pap, collect that, and then offer it to Elsa. And once they eat that, they go crazy for leaves. They start eating leaves. One of the cutest things you'll ever find, and that's when I usually fall in love with koalas, is when they start trying to eat leaf. Their heads are really big for their body, their arms are flailing around everywhere. They want to try and grab the leaf, but they can't. They miss it and they end up grabbing their ears and trying to eat their ears. It's a really cute little thing. They're so adorable. So once they've eaten pap and they're drinking milk, they start to progress very well. We're weighing them every day to make sure their weights go up. When she gets to around about 6 months, and I've had her for 6 months, we have a little tree set up at home, and she has a basket with a fake koala toy that she can sit on. And she becomes independent. So around about the 6 months after I've had her, she'll be about 11 months. We start bringing her to the reptile park. She has her own little room up in our vet block area where she will go on a perch and we present leaves to her. She'll be there for around about one night, and then I take her home. So that's a process over a couple of weeks we do that. And then she'll stay for a couple of nights. And then I'll take her home for a night. Then she'll stay for 3 nights. And then I'll take her home until she's fully weaned up in that in our vet block. We keep weighing her so we know that she's going up in weight and she's not stressing. So then the next big thing is called Koala Play School. And that's when she actually comes down. And if you look over here, we have our photo yard and we have other koalas her age. So we'll introduce her. We'll come down for an hour at a time. We'll put the koala's nose to nose so she knows it's another koala and she doesn't freak out. And then we'll go back up. And so we'll do that for about a week. And then the next week we come down and we pop her in and we leave her there for the day or the morning while we're doing our rounds here. So we can keep an eye on her and she doesn't freak out. And if all things are going well, we just keep doing that until we feel that she's able to stay overnight. And then we'll try her for her first night. But we're weighing and she's getting her bottles in between. She'll get 3 bottles a day. We're still weighing her every day to make sure she's going up in weight. If she's looking stressed or confused or doesn't want to go or be there, we simply just take her back up. We don't force her. Koalas that you hand raise take a lot longer to wean than koalas that do it naturally. And then eventually she's fully weaned and she stays in one of these yards. And then she gets to be held every day still because she loves the cuddles. She misses her mum. And that's how we hand raise and wean koalas. So I'm going to give her a little weigh and then I'm going to ask for some questions. Right? So this is part of the process what we do every day until we think that they're doing really well, and then we weigh koalas weekly. So as you can see, I've got an arm here with a weight scale and just a stick. So this is all you really need, really simple. The koala will hop on and carry like it would in the wild on a branch, and we can get a little weight from her. So she's actually 3.65 kilos. So she's nearly 4 kilos.
Why do you weigh them every day?
So that we know that they're going up in weight. We want to make sure that she's healthy. We don't want to push her too quickly to be an independent koala. And one of the main things when they're stressed, they won't eat and they go downhill very quickly. So we weigh them every day.
How do you know the difference between koalas?
So there's a couple of little factors. There's a couple of little factors here. They can be dark in colour. All koalas look the same, but they're actually really different. And a couple of little factors is their nose. If I can just put her nose up like that. They have different coloration inside their nostrils, different whites and different, it's like a shark, it has different patterns in its nose. Their ears can be fluffier. They can have darker skin, male and female. All koalas here at the reptile park have a name, a photo, so we can identify them. And they're the main factors we do when we try and identify a koala.
So how long did Elsa have to stay at home before she came into the reptile park?
So Elsa was at home for roughly around about 5 months before we started bringing her into the reptile park. Obviously when we come into work she comes in with us, but we have her in the office on a little tree with a little basket and a little fake koala. And then we slowly integrate her more and more by leaving her over one night. But she always came home with me for the first 5 months.
How hard is it collecting the poo to be able to have them papping?
So it's a really interesting concept and it's not one that I like doing. But we actually have to get a female koala and stimulate her cloaca and for about an hour. So you want all the good gut flora that's up here. So you want her to process all the old poo. You don't want the hard stuff, you want the nice sloppy stuff with good oil on it. So you want to see a nice slicky, shiny substance on the poo. And we collect about half a Chinese container of that, and we can keep that up for a couple of days, and we just offer it to her every now and then.
So with like marsupial or joeys, you often have to toilet them. Do you have to toilet koalas in the same way?
Not with koalas, they go by themselves. You don't have to do it with Tasmanian devils anyway. It's mainly just the macropod species that you have to toilet.
Is it true that when they're asleep all the time because they're drunk?
No, that's it's a urban legend, I guess you would say. So these guys sleep 20 hours a day. It's because they don't get any nutrition from their food source. So their food source is this eucalyptus. This eucalyptus is very fibrous. It has hardly any nutrition in it. So they conserve their energy by sleeping 20 hours a day. It takes them a lot of time to process. That's why they've got these big fat guts and looks like cuddly teddy bears, because they have this great, they have this amazing digestive system. So the nutrients actually only get taken out as they poop, nearly.
Do they only eat a eucalyptus leaf?
So there's around about 50 species of eucalypt out of the 800. They do eat other things though. So we offer them sometimes tea tree, bottle brush, casuarina. There's a tree called box brush, which is planted in most streets, and they will nibble on those things. But they're a browse species. They're not their actual food. Talking
about nibbling, she's giving you a few little nibbles there. Is that, in comparison to an adult koala, is the bite, comparable?
No. So she's just giving me a nibble. It doesn't hurt. I can put my finger in. You can see she's got 4 front and sizes. Adult koalas can give you a nice big bite though, but she's just got my finger in her mouth. And they've actually, back teeth are really interesting. They're like, they're there to crush up eucalypt leaf. So they're like an elephant tooth. It's flat with ridges where they grind the leaf down together.
How can you tell the difference between boy and girl koalas?
So there's a couple of things. Girls have got these pretty little faces. Boys get these bigger noses. It's not on Elsa, but the boys will get a stain or a marking here, which they mark when they're about 2 years old. They mark trees to tell the males and females they're around, and obviously they have some boy bits that you can see.
What's their shelter like? So when it's raining, how do they protect themselves from the rain?
So these guys, obviously, you can see here, we give them protection. We try and look after our koalas very well. They get a nice hut with all their perching underneath. But koalas are adapted to living out. So in the wild, they would live at the top of the trees up here. And when it rains, a cool little fact is that they have 2 layers of fur. So they have a short layer and a long layer. And it's so dense that the water never actually penetrates to their skin, it just rolls off. And this is why these guys are in so much danger, because they used to be hunted for their furs to make hats that were waterproof.
We might have one last question.
Yes, guys.
Why are their ears so big?
So their ears are so big, it's so they can hear out for calls for other male for koalas. They do a vocalization, and I'll show you what that vocalization is. It's a deep guttural one. It's like, and see, she's looking at me, so she's like, hey, what's going on here? So these guys live they're solitary animals. Mum and bubs will live together. Males will live separately, and males travel a long distance to get to females, and they do that call. So this is why they got these big ears.
So we might just leave it there then?
All right, guys. Well, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed that. And we hope to see you real soon here at the Australian Reptile Park.